Welcome to Warblock. I've got a few games under coming soon. I'll probably finish these quite quickly. But what we're looking at today is the Battle of Derna. Now, this took place between the 7th of May and 28th of June, and I did sort of ignore it during that period, mainly because I don't know. Well, I do know because I've already done it beforehand. So if we go into the search and put in Derna, I'm hoping, I don't know, I imagine so. Yeah, so I had Derna here from 2017, so I'd done it, and I thought, well, what's the point in doing it again? What's the difference going to be between this one and this one? Well, I did want to wait for this one as well for another reason, because basically it changes. You know, when I saw it reported on, say, the 10th of May, for example, I thought, oh right, they're actually attacking. If I'd done the scenario then, even as it was defined or reported, it would have changed, and it would be a bit like many of the Syrian ones where you're really doing the same sort of operation 3 or 4 times. But because it was so sort of clear, I did think I'd sort of wait and then do it when it was finished to get the full picture. Not that it really makes a huge amount of difference, but also that I had it already. So let's have a quick look at this one first. And I haven't done a video for this. I've got adverts. I can't. My ad blocks doesn't seem to be on, which is bizarre. I've never seen adverts on my site, and it's quite disconcerting. But anyway, so here it is. So the thing is, you've got 2 task force, one there, so, and 2 sort of, or 3 artillery units with infantry support. So that's that, and it's quite a simple one. It's on the small map, and you just think, well, okay, well, you could play that. Now the difference here is we don't have the hills. There are more. It's more hilly around here, so I could maybe do that, putting these as hills, putting some agriculture down here, maybe titling that, etc., etc. So if we go back and look at the Battle of Derna, the difference here is on a bigger map, they're not sort of face to face. I mean, in the other one I did the face to face because they were surrounded, so I assume they were surrounded. So I think it's interesting, really, that you can have these sort of two games and they can look so different, and I think that's key to understanding several things that happen in war films. I'm confusing myself there. In war games, people will design something, and you will actually get a completely different look and feel, and your sort of impression of what happened will be defined or be altered by that. You might sort of think, well, this was more important, and now people do things to sort of leverage that, to sort of emphasise what was important and what was significant, in particular things like supply and command. But you know, my argument in many cases is that those things are irrelevant in these sorts of scenarios. You know, there was no way they were going to run out of supply, although these people might have. But in insurgencies of this sort of asymmetric, these sorts of wars, supply is less of an issue. I don't, you know, they sort of make do. They're probably making their own bullets, etc., etc., and probably being supplied by sea covertly. I don't know, but also supplied by oil. But I'm saying is the focus of the game mechanics can sway how you perceive a game. So it could be that you could play this in a supply sense, but they didn't. They had to attack. They had been surrounding it since 17. I haven't got a date on that, but I could probably find the date. It's sort of odd news thing. Right, well, I hate all this SSL. I really do. I had a big argument with an evangelist on it, and you know, it doesn't help anyone. I don't think. All their sort of scenarios, but they're full of crap. But anyway, so I couldn't get onto that. I'm not going to start faffing around and whatever. But I could probably get a date for that report. So anyway, this is this. I'm not really going to necessarily play it all the way through, but for the sake of creating a video, I'm going to go a little further. Now, essentially, the historic is here, so they're coming from here, 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 and here. So most of their attack comes in from the southeast. One thing to know about this is that the dates are all here. So, for example, the Taniskit Hills, they took on the, and you've got to get this sort of odd dating, I think it's American. It always throws me because, is this the 6th or the 9th, or the 9th or the 6th? Well, it's the 9th or the 6th. So they took this on 27th of the 5th. So we can go back there, and we can see that Tamiskus Hill, 27th of the 5th. Now, the objectives get really crappy. You know, I can just imagine people going, oh, I can't read it. And, well, yeah, you can't. You can't zoom in, it gets a bit, you know, but you get the idea. I mean, there's an objective there. There's one there. What's this one? This one is probably there. I think you'll find that that hex is an objective. I mean, what about this one? This one's an objective too, or is it? No, that's just a place. That's in white. But you know, generally speaking, see, this is an objective, and they took it on the 28th of the 5th. That's bizarre because this entrenchment seems to be above that. I didn't know that. I'll have to change that if I can remember. Let me just pause that and make a note of it, because I do have a thing for making notes. Yeah, so I've put that in my pile of notes, things to do. I wonder what the audio is going to be like. Let's double check that I've even plugged it in. Right. So, yes, so basically you can see the dates. So I put the dates around the right way. So this was taken on the 28th of the 5th, and this is taken on the 4th of the 6th, etc, etc. Now, what we've got here, let's just go back. We've got three primary forces. Now these people are the Shura Council of the Mujahideen in Derna, and they are the Mujahideen in Derna. Now they are only active until the 11th of May, which isn't a lot. So they're only active for 4 days, but then they become, I'm not sure, pretty much I think that what they then become is the Derna Protection Force. You know, I think they've tried to sort of maybe move away from being the Mujahideen in Derna to the Derna Protection Force. But so what we've got down here is the Mujahideen and then the DPF, and they're probably one and the same, but there's a sort of strategic change. Now I haven't put that in there to sort of say, oh, magically in 4 days time all these forces appear. To get around that sort of interpretation, I just put them on the front line here so that they will go. So on this one, you're probably going to take that after these people have somehow gone. So it's just a bit of a mix, and the other mix in the equation is the now we've got the Al-Qaeda in Sinai Peninsula. Now they play a minimal role, and obviously I can't spell the name right. But there's also somewhere else in here. In theory, oh yeah, that's because they appear on turn 6. So on turn 3, now this is ISIL, but because to be quite honest, I do have some ISIL units obviously, but I couldn't find an insurgent one, and I just really couldn't be bothered to change it, so it's an ISIS unit. But the ISIL are there as well, and they take minimal role, but they do carry out a car bomb attack against some units at some point. So I put them on turn 3, so you can reflect that. You've got a minimal appearance of Al-Qaeda in Sinai Peninsula. They appear in the sort of the twaddly bit, giving away my trade secrets. The twaddly bot of the map there, so they appear there on turn 6. So that's sort of pretty much that. Now, obviously, the Wikipedia thing says that they're coming from there. I mean, I pretty much remember it, but just so that I can show you what I'm referring to. There. And there. So those are the 3 lines of attack, and so to sort of reflect that, I've got quite a big armoured unit there, I've got some there. I haven't really put anything there, to be quite honest, and then there's a block up here. But I've sort of assumed that this, instead of being a sort of drive like that, is more a drive on the front, like that. That's how I've interpreted that to some extent. And so what my intention was to provide these sort of blocks of units, and then you could sort of swing them round this way, you know, to create that sort of flow. It was my intention that this player the House of Representatives would shift around, because they've got a lot of units in here and they don't attack there. So, but because it's quite a sort of distant sort of area and quite well defended, I've sort of plonked them in there as sort of this is the central reserve. But in theory, what you'd be doing with these is maybe committing this block, which is quite a reasonable stack, up here to support that attack, and maybe this block could drive all the way down here to do that. And so you might spend the first turn or 2 turns manoeuvring and adjusting where you think that you would go, because remember, this isn't a simulation or a reflection of what happened, it's based on what happened, but from the very start it's the decisions are yours, and that's sort of, we can say, well, this is what happened, so we could then say, well, okay, we've got to move on this front, this front, this front, and this front, so we'd have to move them. But the thing is, why did they do that? Now the thing is, they might have done it because there's a road. They might have done it because there's a road, and also because there's a road. So they might have just chosen to come along the roads and keep the roads. But this one doesn't have a road, but there's probably tracks. But you know, so we can say, well, why did they do what they were doing? And now personally, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. But the whole point of this sort of conversation really is to think, well, how would you do it? Now they've been surrounding this place since 2017, as we already defined and stated. So they've been under siege for a long time, and in a situation like that, you might sort of thought, well, we might do one thing or another. For example, what they could have done was to, let's just reload this. I mean, these are just ideas, and it's interesting really because it's, you know, you can't be necessarily too far off. in the correctness of your ideas, if you have some. For example, what we could do is go for a push there, and a push there, essentially with the objective of isolating this pocket and isolating this pocket. And then what you would do as a result of that is you would then just have a much smaller enclave, because you could isolate them, and I'm not saying they would surrender, but you can concentrate the bulk of your forces by taking that and then moving into these areas, and preventing them from sort of retreating back into a more ever concentrating sort of defensive position, which is quite naturally defendable. The only other thing that I haven't read the article, to be quite honest, I'm sort of a bit like that. I tend to sort of come back to that. I just want to get the basics in there, from almost a commercial point of view. But I never like to spend more than I have to sort of doing these, because they already take a long time. But what I'm saying is, I know that the Libyan National Army have some aircraft, so they might have used some, and I might have just not read it in the WhatsApp. But it sort of doesn't matter. I mean, the use of aircraft isn't really that significant, in my opinion, in a situation like this when you've got artillery, because all it is delivering ordnance. It's not as though they've got these precision guided missiles. I really doubt that they've got that, because they're probably quite expensive, and there's probably the sort of things that the Americans would use and would show footage of. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they're really not so fussed about who they blew up. I'm not saying they're deliberately blowing people up, but the Wikipedia article does state that the United Nations raised concerns that civilians were being blown up needlessly or whatever. The only other thing to say about this, I don't think it was as a full frontal war as this game makes it out to be, and a lot of the games that I put together sort of make it out to be quite a significant and much more reasoned assault, and it wasn't really. I mean, they were sort of doing things like they were moving into a particular place, and there would be a bit of a skirmish and 6 people would die, but that was really it. The intensity of the defence wasn't that great, and I think they spent the 7 weeks doing it mainly because they were doing it step by step, as opposed to there was I think there were probably days where there was no gunfire. It was more of a game of cat and mouse, I think. But the point I'm sort of trying to get to is that when you start thinking, well, what would you do? Well, obviously they had aircraft, so I sort of pointed that, but I'm not sure the aircraft could have really done much. But I would have thought that they might have considered some kind of naval invasion. I mean, why not? Let's go for a yellow. Yeah, that works good on the blue. They could have sent commandos in to take Derna. I keep thinking of Tobruk, because I'm pretty sure the English would have had commandos doing such things. But there might have been other ways to do it. Sort of to send in some commandos to and then assassinate an appropriate person, etc., etc. Or even just not maybe commandos, a naval and amphibious landing. Disguised coming in the night as fishermen. You could probably get, I don't know, about 3 or 4 boats. You can maybe get 200 men, or a company of strength. But if you could do that, or even a helicopter landing. I'm not sure what sort of helicopter assets they had, but they could have just flown in low. I doubt that this sort of Mujahideen in Derna setup have radar. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but you could probably come in really low with helicopters, even just sort of regular commercial helicopters, and just landed loads of troops in appropriate places, and maybe just cut off the head from the rest of the body, like a serpent, You know, so what I'm saying is that there could be other options, and the map to some extent makes me sort of think or question and consider how he did that. But the thing is, I'm not in a brilliant place to really consider that because I haven't actually even read the Wikipedia article. You know, I'm not going to pretend I haven't, but it does go down here. You know, Human Rights Watch has reported that civilians are endangered. You know, but you see it's got a step-by-step thing of what happened, and it doesn't look as though there were sort of major sort of, you know, on the 11th of June they've only got a few pockets of resistance remaining in the eastern part of the city. You know, many outlets are reporting the battle is nearing its end. I haven't actually read it, but you know, when there doesn't sound sort of like a massive all-out war. I mean, here on the 11th of June, they're reporting that, well, the 5th of June, they're reporting that most of it's been taken. That's only a couple of weeks in. But what it does say here is that France were involved. Now, I've not read where that is. So all I'm saying is that, I mean, to be quite honest, I'm doing more reading now than I did before, just because, you know, that's how I work, really. But they do have some United Arab Emirates support. Now, that's surprising, but I don't really know how, and I haven't read it, so I haven't put them in. And what I imagine is that the UAE maybe sort of gave them some arms, you know, gave them some specific arms to help them. But also France, allegedly. Now that's interesting because France seems to pop up everywhere in North Africa. It comes so much clearer when you start to study these things. You know, the extent to which France had colonised North Africa, and you know, almost to some extent, you know, answers sort of some of the reasons why they've got the sort of problems with immigration that they do at the moment, because they've just been, you know, they're so close to North Africa and they're so pally with them. You know, it's part of their history, really. But anyway, so it says France was sort of allegedly involved. Now I don't know. I haven't read here where it gets what they did. But the thing is, what, you know, how could France have been involved, you know, as a government? Well, they would have probably been offering something that the other guys couldn't offer, couldn't provide for themselves. That would be maybe satellite, aerial photography, intelligence, information, things like that. But it could have been special forces, you know, to do sort of particular attacks. There's one bit in there where the salination plant goes down, you know, and so they might have been targeting things like the desalination plant, you know, and although lots and lots of people would be affected, you know, they might have to come to the decision, well, they can repair it, it won't be for that long. I mean, it is war, but you know, they could have done things like that. They might have been fighting with precision airstrikes. Now that's something I haven't looked into. I mean, but that would be a little more sort of basic in what they could have offered. What I was thinking is, you know, there could have been French special forces, or what they commonly call French military advisors. You know, basically their commanders are French, telling them what to do. Etc., etc. But we don't know. It says allegedly, so we don't know. You know, I don't think they had sort of like 2 French armoured companies, you know, in there, or something as sort of with such a basic footprint as that. But so the thing is, you could sort of think, well, how could you do it? So we've got the historic, and to be quite honest, I would probably be more likely to sort of try and isolate these 2 pockets first, but they seem to have sort of taken the other approach of just, you know, gradually reducing them. Now the thing is, one of the benefits of that is that you can, by giving the enemy the option to retreat, they're probably more likely to retreat, whereas if they've got no option to retreat, such as being in a pocket against the sea, they're probably more likely to stand and fight a lot more fiercely. So maybe that was what the reason for coming this way. You can gradually push them back with less difficulty, in the knowledge that they're going to do things like run out of ammunition. Now that's a supply issue, but the thing is, you can roleplay that, etc., etc. But you know, sort of just thinking about how it works. I'm going to sort of leave it at that, because I don't really want to start doing moves, to be quite honest. I think it's a really interesting game. I was looking at it thinking, oh yeah, well, this is actually, you know, more interesting than I thought it was going to be. You've got lots of units, but not too many. I mean, when I sort of looked at this one, to be quite honest, this doesn't really appeal to me. I wouldn't sort of think, oh, this is going to be an exciting game. It just seems like it's a Microsoft advert. I'm pretty sure that all these adverts are propaganda, you know. I mean, what's he supposed to be sort of... Why is he showing me this old man? You know, as though he's sort of, in some way... Thank God it's in Dutch, and I can't be insulted by this message. Krish in hier gratis toegang tot ons populairste producten. Something a year gratis, so first year gratis, Krish a year, you know, toegang tot ons for our most popular product. Probeer a zeer gratis uit. I don't know, but I'm insulted by that picture. I don't want to see that. Now the thing is, you don't get the adverts. So at least I'm pretty sure you don't get the adverts when you play. I always use ad blocker. I mean, I only have ads on for obvious reasons, really. I just want to monetize the site, and I know it's sort of a bit much, but it's not really more than a lot of other sites have, and they don't move and jump around, and they earn nothing at all. I'm actually wondering why I even bother. You know, I do wonder why I bother with the adverts. What's this? Nieuwe koffer nodig. That says new bag need new bag. We helpen je kiezen. We help you get one. Or something like that. I should really learn Dutch. Obviously the Dutch word cool blue. Yeah, anyway. See, the whole idea with the site is that when I got $460 games, that's 460 independent pages, all of reasonable quality as far as I'm concerned. For example, this game should be dragging in traffic for people looking for Derna, you know, but not just Derna, maybe the Libyan National Army. I do put keywords at the bottom of the page sometimes, but in this one I haven't really. But the whole idea is that someone, you know, if we go to Mujahideen in Derna, it's all Google's pals. Wikipedia, Long War Journal, WikiWand. You know, if you rip off Wikipedia with a cheap-ass website, that's fine. You know, it's controlled content. Jihadology. Reuters. Al Jazeera, Sputnik News. You know, a lot of these are news sites. It's all controlled content. The bottom line is, you're not even Facebook. You know, the bottom line is you're not seeing my site. My site is basically blocked from Google, and Google will say, oh, it's not, because if you go for Warblog and whatever, you can. It gets like one hit every 2 days, and but the whole point is people might type that in, because Mujahideen in Derna, clearly I've got that in here like quite a lot of times, you know, but not too much. And maybe they're thinking, oh, it's repeated, it's just a list. Well, obviously anyone that knows war games knows this isn't an order of battle, and it's quite legitimate and quite fair, and I didn't put it in there to repeat the keywords or anything like that. But the bottom line is, this page should be bringing in traffic, and then they think, you know, for example, some Mujahideen people are very much wanting washing machine, and they click on this advert and they buy a washing machine. You know, that's how adverts work, and you know, that's how you monetize sites. And so you know, that's sort of why the adverts are there. But it generates nothing, and I don't want to sort of go off too much of a tangent, but I'm pretty sure that they're at war with small business and what you call passive income, because essentially this site could be earning a huge amount in passive income, and they're just blocking it. You know, it just doesn't happen. I mean, it's been up for now 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and you know, that's quite a lot, and it just, you know, they obviously don't like people making games that involve enemies of the state. You know, obviously the thing is, this is a historic event, you know, and you know who's on whose side. I mean, we've got the House of Representatives versus the Shura Council of Mujahideen in Derna, and the Derna Protection Force. You know, the thing with this one is neither side is the sort of North Atlantic Alliance, should we say. I mean, France is involved a little bit, so, but many of the other ones are sort of, you know, it's what's happening. You know, the Nigerian struggle against Boko Haram, it really doesn't involve the United States. The United States are in there a little bit. Somalia, the Ukraine. You know, I'm just sort of thinking, well, they just don't want people seeing alternative views on that, and this is hardly alternative. You know, as long as I'm saying one side is better than the other, it's just, you know, whatever. But yeah, so that's what the adverts are there for, so that people will then sort of type in Battle of Derna, for example. Now, I didn't title this because I wanted to get. That's not what I do. You know, a lot of the games are just Ginny Village. I mean, no one's going to type that in. Al-Mal. I mean, you know, that's just so vague, and it probably, you know, it probably doesn't even exist. I mean, we know that we don't even know whether Shangali Calais exists or whether it's a Mortican Calais. So, you know, Obok. You know, many of these things we just simply don't know anything about. So it's hardly as though, you know, they're all sort of like, you know. They're hardly clickbait, but anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm not gonna sort of start moving them around, because I think it would take quite a long time, and a bit of thinking about. But I think the way to do it would be to sort of, you know, quite clearly. I'm gonna go into my games to quite clearly create some sort of what I call battle groups. That's what I tend to call them for some reason. I've seen other people call them battle groups, but no one in earnest. We've got one there. We've got a definite battle group there. We could probably include that as well. We've got another one down here. You could almost say we've got all this as a battle group. And then we've got this one here. In fact, that's sort of everything. You know, we've got this giving us this front. We've got this, which could give us this front, and we've got this, which could give us this, and this. So, you know, that could be how it's done, or how they intended it to be done, or how you might think about doing it. But I would be more inclined, what with this being such a big battle group, to just sort of push them forward like that. So to take that out first, like that, and then to push, as I said, into there, and then to sweep all of this up. And I might, if I was to play that, I might do that, and then just not move any of these. I'm a big sort of what's it for not moving things, because I think in war games people tend to move everything. It's alright, it's my turn, I can move everything, and they'll move everything because they can. But I think when you look at how these sort of scenarios actually pan out in the real world, what happens is that they do one little thing at a time. You know, they might have this attack here, and nothing else really happens. And they say, oh, today they attack these 2 points, pushing these units, you know, back, etc. And then they'll see how that goes, and then they might sort of say, okay, well, we're going to have a sudden pincher on this, and they sort of do one thing at a time, and then it's like when they get good at it. I'm not saying this is what they do, because this is just an observation, but if you think about it like this, they start doing two things at a time, and then you start to get up to sort of grown up battle management, and that would be, you know, things like D-Day, where you're actually doing, you can't just do one little beachhead at a time, so you've got, you know, like 50 operations all going in at the same time. But this is how this works. So that would be one operation, this would be two operations. To get sort of, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 operations all going in at the same time, you'd have to plan that. So well, what are we going to do here? And when you've got time on your side, they've had over a year to do this. They got the time, you know, and the reason the battle actually started is because their negotiations collapsed. I'm not sure what the negotiations involved, but yeah. So I think it would make actually quite an interesting game. Hopefully, it's giving you a bit of an insight into this, and hopefully you'll sort of think, oh, well, look at that, we've got two. You sort of see that, you know, how that works, because you could almost play exactly the same thing on here, but it's slightly different. I don't think you could sort of, because you've got this quite solid defence line along here. But if I was to play this one, see on here what we've actually got the Libyan National Army, and what we've got here is the Libyan National Army. Whereas what we're playing there is the Shura, is the other guys. I can't remember, the House of Representatives. Now, they are part of the Libyan National Army, because if you look at this, it says it was the Battle of Derna was a military campaign by the Libyan House of Representatives to capture the city of Derna from the Shura Council of Mujahideen in Derna, also known as the Derna Protection Force. And that's what I based it all on. But if you look at the result, major Libyan National Army victory, and so it was actually the Libyan National Army. So maybe I should have used the Libyan National Army units instead of the Shura the House of Representatives units that I have used. You know, instead of these ones, House of Representatives. So it's all a bit confusing, really. But I think as long as you're open and in front of, you know, that sort of nature of how things are confusing, it's you know, you've got a. I didn't even play that one. You know, you can interpret things and understand them full. I mean, that's all they're really there for, to give you a platform and a start for understanding them. But on this one, what I want to do is just click in play. And I'm sure I did this. It should be in my game, so I don't know why I missed it. Probably was there. But on this one, it seems that this is a much harder nut to crack there. Now on this one, we've got artillery there, and that would be my focus to take out. So we obviously have got battle groups, and I would drive that battle group straight into there to push that out, and him, if he could, somehow get straight into there to push that out, because the artillery is the one thing that's going to make it painful for this assault to go through. And then bit by bit, I don't know, I mean, I think the obvious temptation would be to sort of maybe try and take these units out as soon as possible, but then to sort of really get this you know, their artillery here, and here, you know, just pounding away. And 1, 2, 3, 4, and we could get to there. 1, 2, 3, 4. We could get to that stack. We get to those stacks. 1, 2, 3, 4. We get that unit. I mean, obviously we can move up later, but you know, I'd be starting to pound this area, because by the time, you know, you could just sit there doing that, what they would have to do is sort of counter-attack, and they've got the options to counter-attack, but it's very weak. You know, there's nowhere where they really have great odds at all. But you know, with their artillery, they could pound on something like this, and then maybe get 2 units against 1. But because they're dug in, they're only going to be fighting at 1-to-1s, and so is the national Libyan National Army. That NLA is the wrong way around. It should be LNA, not NLA. Oh well. Etc. etc. So essentially, what I'm saying, you've got 2 versions of this game that you can play and look at critically in different ways, and even directly spot variances and changes in the, you know, the sort of the, not so much the order of battle, but the way they're set up, terrain-wise, and it's really interesting. I saw this film just the other day. I'll mention what it is. I'd always not wanted to see it because it just struck me as sort of gratuitous violence or whatever. But it was this film called Scum, which is made in England in 1979. And I looked at it and thought, well, this is what I thought it was, because I thought it was a film about prisons. I thought it was just about, you know, one of these films where the prisoners are, you know, going around beating each other. And to be quite honest, someone told me about it, and even then, and I think it's because I was quite young at the time. Now I would have been young, and the person on the front of the you know, the advertising for it looked quite old. He looked like a prisoner. You know, I didn't see him as a young person. But anyway, it's about being in Borstal. But that's beside the point. The point is, they made it in '79. I looked at it, I thought, God, why did I miss this? Why have I never seen this before? You know, it's 2018, and I realised that there wasn't another one. I wasn't confusing, because I wanted to see, well, what film was I confusing it with? It's like, you know, they have all these films that about bad boys and crime. It's glorifies crime. I'm really not into that, but this was a really good film. And so I started looking into it to try and figure out which ones I confused it with. And what happened with that, they actually made a first film, the BBC made a first film called Scum in 1977. And for some reason I didn't like it. Now there's a bit of homosexuality in there, and I don't know what really was the main issue, whether it was that or the violence. But basically I got the feeling that, oh, when I read it, it said, oh, they didn't, you know, it didn't get past the censors, so they had to remake the whole film. And I thought, wow, if they didn't get past the censors, why was that? It must be worth watching. So I tried to find it out, and it's on YouTube. And I looked at it, and it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same, and it's like you've got here. You've got 2 scenarios exactly the same, but they're done differently, and you pick up differently. And they have this lead character called Carlin, who basically, in the second one, the 79 version, is really central to it, and is quite a potent character. But in the first one, he's more of a background character. There's less focus on him as being sort of the main character in the film, and more of some, you know, generalised sort of version of the scenario, which is set in a Borstal. And I prefer the first one actually, because things are not things are less, I wouldn't say they're less intense, but they're more believable. For example, they have this I'm not sure what his name is. They have this sort of intellectual character who's, you know, he's in the first one he's cast as a sort of a Liverpudlian with a bit of an attitude, but more intelligent. And in the second one, they replace him with a public school boy, and it completely different versions of the same thing. You know, one is, there's just no comparison between the two because of their class origins as portrayed. And I prefer the first one because of that, because it's actually quite believable. You know, he's a very believable sort of person. You can almost imagine him having the sort of attitude that he's got. But in the second one, it's not believable in any sense, because people from public schools don't behave like that. You know, and I think it's interesting how this same film took on 2 completely different perspectives on exactly the same thing, the film Scum. And you've got the same thing here. I mean, you can look at this and you can say, well, you know, you've got a different actor. You've got the Libyan the National Libyan Army here, and here you've got the House of Representatives. I prefer it when it's the Libyan National Army. You've got air power in here, but you've got hills in here. You've got almost a face-to-face line here, but you've got a more distributed line there. So you can look at these 2 films and you can realise that you look at these two games and realise that there is absolutely no there's no definitive way of setting these things up, and people quite often do this in in other sort of areas. I've seen people online on YouTube, and they'll get, I don't know, I'm guessing it, but they might get a game of Waterloo, and then they might get 3 or 4 other games for Waterloo, Napoleon's Last Battles or whatever, and then they'll compare them and see how they work, and even compare the maps and show that one game has certain undulations in hills and the other one doesn't, and then talk about how significant the undulations were because they were able to put their guns just behind the hills, or just behind the undulations, and they weren't hills, they were just undulations, etc., etc. But other things like including certain roads, including certain connectivity between certain hexes. I mean, that's a big one. I mean, in particular on this game, sort of, I didn't want to include that one because it makes it look a bit square, but I didn't want to not include it because it's got the geography's got a definite promontory, but it might only be sort of like that. It hardly warrants the entire hex. But down here, there's definitely somewhere here more of an undulation coming out here. It goes down like that, but I didn't want to put one of these because it's just too prominent. So it's all these sorts of things, like how the sort of coastline looks. I mean, it's a far more prominent feature there, and we've got that jutting out there. Whereas here, well, we've got that jutting out as well, but we've got 2 jutting out. So it's a bit just comparing and seeing how even just the layout, the design of the map, the geography, the road connections, the terrain types, the sort of building locations. Even the sort of spatial differences between one location and the other can actually change the nature and the feel of the game, and that's why I think that it really all comes together, because you've got to realise that this is just a tool. This is just a tool for developing your understanding about the Battle of Derna 2018. I mean, you could almost look at this one and say, well, this was the 2017 position, and criticise and not so much criticise in a negative way, but you could sort of open a dialogue onto why it was like that. Difference between there and then. I mean, we know that they were surrounding them for a whole year. So what was happening? You could sort of in your own mind's eye, you can say, well, okay, well, there must have been some negotiations, and then you can look at the Wikipedia, maybe do some research, and find out what those negotiations entailed and what all that was about. I mean, the only thing I can sort of really say on top of that, from a general perspective, understanding of the situation in Libya, is that the House of Representatives, the Libyan National Army, now control all of that part. I mean, they've got a little bit of Benghazi that I think is still owned by ISIS, but they seem to have the upper hand if there is a continuing and ongoing civil war into controlling most of Libya. It depends whether they, whether they're going to accept the situation and go for two-state solution, or whether or not they're really going to end up sort of continuing that push to take out the other guys. I can never remember who they are, Government and National Accord, I can't remember who they are, but if you look at the I look at this all the time, so much so that I've got it in my fast maps thing. That's the Ukraine. What I'm referring to is live map. I had the option here of cutting this off at 20 minutes, and now I've just gone on for sort of forever. But Middle East, Libya, here's the map. So if we look at the map, you can see now that's Derna there. So they've taken that bit out. They recently made some advances down here and had some problems with in the oil crescent. There's Benghazi, which still has a little bit of ISIS in there, just to the south. But they've sort of now, this is now, well, they've still got it in there. So obviously they still control a little bit. Let's look at the key. Play the most hardcore free A9 game ever. This is why I don't like adverts, because I don't want to be insulted by, essentially child porn. And it's not child porn. It's shocking. Different factions and groups. So that's what we've got there. get rid of that. But you know, you can sort of think, well, this is what this picture is: the Libyan National Army 128th Battalion patrol along the road connecting Sirte and Jufra. So there's Jufra, so patrolling along this road. One of ISIS' current main areas of operation. So, you know, so this is the Libyan National Army. So who are these people? So maybe they're not there, but maybe they're there. But so when you see, I'm always keen to get people to sort of, you know, look at the other sources and other commentary. But that's the situation in Libya at the moment, and it's one of the things that Warblog doesn't have is this sort of ongoing strategic overlay of what's happening. It's more the battles, and sometimes you don't even know where these places are. It would be nice to have some sort of polygon sort of structure like this that you could adjust over time. But to be quite honest, they don't really amount to much. But I think what you can clearly see here is that they've now, because they had, these people had areas over here, and there's always this stuff here as well, which is, see, the Tobruk-based government is backed by Russia, and the Tripoli-based government, which is the anti-ISIS coalition, is supported by NATO, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, UAE, etc. So this is sort of like the UN-backed thing, and this is the Russian-backed part of Libya. But obviously, there's a potential for a lot of war going on there. I mean, I don't know why they've put so much emphasis on the Islamic State, because they're only there in south of Benghazi. I mean, who is this? Now, I think they're tribal people. I mean, it doesn't really say. Yeah, Tuareg tribesmen. And I think they're more sort of neutral, but they seem to play a little bit of a part. But I would have thought that there's just, you know, unless they're going to sort of just settle for that, you know, there's obviously something that's going to happen along here, possibly taking out Sirte in order to protect the, you know, the oil crescent a little more, or this Sabah, you know, bit by bit. But they might not. But they've got this enclave over here, and I think that's quite significant and important. You know, they might control all of this because there's nothing there, but there's nothing here. You know, it's easy to control. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that because now I've talked for absolutely too long. But hopefully that'll give you an idea. You know, and I hope you sort of, you know, enjoy looking at this map, and you know, if you feel inclined to play it, I hope you enjoy playing it, because I'm pretty sure that you could find some challenges in that. I'm not sure it'd be the sort of a simple walkover that, you know, you might imagine it should have been, it could have been. I'm pretty sure this would be a walkover, but again, you've got to actually do it. Those are the things, and the challenge is to sort of quantify what victory is, because you could win it and lose, say, 10 units, and you can win it and lose 2 units, and one would clearly be a better victory than the other, but you're probably clearly going to win it. But then again, you might not. It depends. So anyway, I'll leave it that. Again, you know, you can remember you can play these games against opponents. You can print and play them as well. So you can play them on your tabletop or your carpet, or wherever, however else you use, print them out, etc. And I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.